We are now ready for Kush Wadwa, who is the CEO of Trilateral Research, which is all about ethical AI. And he will talk to us about human capital and responsible AI in public and private sector institutions. And I think he's really well positioned to do this because at Trilateral Research, he was already specialized in privacy, data protection, and ethics. And then he grew the firm from a research consultancy to an ethical AI development company. So, very warm welcome to Kush Wadwa. The floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you, Yuri. Thank you, Governor Galcian, as well as Deputy Governor Novekian, for your kind, and the entire board of governors for your kind invitation and your generous hospitality. It is a real pleasure and an honor for me to be here. And hello to everybody else who's attending online and here. Let me start with a reflection that I think will resonate with all of you. Bureaucracy. Yeah. We've all heard the stories. Central banks, especially the big ones, and I'm not going to name them, face constant challenges with layers of decision-making, slow implementation, and the weight of institutional inertia. Policymakers in these institutions are openly discussing their desire for frameworks like the prudent risk management approach. Yet despite their resources and expertise, progress remains slow. And then there's the Central Bank of Armenia. Yes, truly. You have achieved something truly remarkable. In just over a year, you designed and implemented a monetary policy framework that tackles problems that many central banks and advanced economies are still struggling to address. I'm referring, of course, to the issues that were raised in the November 22 working paper co-authored by Governor Galcian, Doug Claxton, and David Archer, which laid the foundation for the framework. And in 1 year, right, 1 year, by December 2023, you had fully developed the prudent risk management approach to monetary policy, moving beyond the limitations of baseline forecasts and local approximations. The speed and precision with which you achieve this is nothing short of revolutionary. But the reason, and I applaud you, the reason I applaud you is for embracing accountability, transparency, and trust as the core values at the foundation of this achievement. I'm a tech guy, okay? And what fascinates me about monetary policy and policy in general is that it involves highly complex processes. Designing responsible and ethical AI to address such processes reminds me of my own work in the area requiring exceptional care and precision. And that was combating child exploitation, which has highly sensitive data of the most vulnerable in our society, using AI. Developing the first application took us 5 years, working in a co-designed manner with UK policing, the health service, and local authorities in cities. It took us 5 years because we had to create entirely new responsible AI methods, incorporating ethics by design, frameworks, and interdisciplinary insights. However, once these foundations were built, subsequent AI applications that we built for challenges like modern slavery, gender violence, combating the effects of air pollution were completed within 3 to 12 months. This experience made me acutely aware of how foundational work processes, whether in building AI or in monetary policy, are critical to long-term success. Central banks deal with some of the most complex analytical tasks imaginable. understanding and forecasting the economy, designing monetary policies, and communicating those complex ideas and tasks to the public. These are not just data-driven exercises. They require critical thinking, experience, and contextual understanding. This makes the role of AI both promising and precarious. Promising because AI can enhance efficiency, reduce repetitive work, and improve collaboration. Precarious because over-reliance on AI could erode human expertise, lower standards, and expose central banks to reputational risks if outputs lack critical scrutiny. It's tempting to think of AI as a silver bullet that can uncover hidden patterns and solve complex problems effortlessly. But as Armin and Doug will highlight later, this is far from the truth. The risks of developing and deploying AI without building the human capital required to co-pilot the AI are profound. First, there is the erosion of expertise. If people rely on AI-generated outputs without understanding or assessing them, the result is not enhanced productivity, but diminished standards and weaker analysis. Second, reputational damage. Central banks simply cannot afford to publish reports or make decisions based on flawed AI outputs. The cost of getting it wrong, including loss of credibility, public trust, and institutional reputation, simply too high. And finally, false confidence in automation. AI tools must not replace human judgment. They can assist in workflows. But ultimate responsibility rests with experienced professionals who can discern what is valuable and what is not. In short, AI can erode human capital if its use is not paired with strong training, oversight, and a clear understanding of its purpose and limitations. The solution, of course, lies in responsible AI adoption, which starts with investing in human capital. Central banks should focus on, one, training staff, empowering people to use AI effectively without becoming dependent on it. Staff should remain the experts, using AI as a tool to augment their work rather than replace their expertise. Two, taking responsibility. AI-generated outputs should never be accepted without 100% ownership and accountability from those responsible for the analysis. This requires experienced professionals to critically evaluate the outputs before they are used. And finally, three, improving processes, really thinking of it as work redesign. Responsible AI can help make stressful and resource-intensive processes, such as the quarterly projection cycle, far more efficient. By automating repetitive tasks, AI allows staff to focus on high-value activities like refining scenarios, engaging in critical thinking, and improving communications. When implemented responsibly, AI has the potential to reduce workload pressures, improve work-life balance, and create a happier, more productive workforce. And we all know a happier workforce means higher quality output and greater success in attracting and retaining talent. So to illustrate, let me reflect on how the quarterly projection process, a demanding and high-stakes task for central banks, could benefit from responsible AI. Imagine an AI system that automates data processing, document drafting, saving hours of repetitive work. Generate charts and visualizations aligned with the best standards, freeing staff to focus on refining analysis. An AI system that provides tools for multilingual drafting, streamlining the creation of reports in 2 or more languages, as is often required in smaller central banks. These benefits are real, and they can be realized now. But only if AI is used thoughtfully, using some of the same values that you've used for your prudent risk management approach, financial risk management approach. But AI needs to be used thoughtfully with human oversight, ensuring that the outputs meet the highest standards that central banks are known for. My message to you is simple. Central banks cannot afford to wait and must act with a sense of urgency. The AI revolution is already shaping industries and sectors, and those who fail to engage with it responsibly risk being left behind. But adopting AI is not just about technology, it's about embedding it into your processes in a way that enhances your institution's strengths. Here's what I recommend. Start with training. Start with training. Develop human capital first. Train your teams to use AI tools effectively while maintaining accountability for the outputs. Proactively identify opportunities. Focus on areas where AI can add value without compromising the quality of your analysis. Foster a culture of ownership. This is about building user demand. Ensure that every AI assisted output is reviewed, refined, and owned by your team. In conclusion, I would say to you, ladies and gentlemen, that the journey you've undertaken with the prudent risk management approach is a shining example of what's possible when central banks commit to excellence. As you explore how to extend this approach to areas like financial stability, climate change, aging demographics, remember that responsible AI can be a powerful ally, but only when paired with expertise, accountability, and commitment that central banks bring to the table. I thank you again for your attention, and I'm looking forward to hopefully receiving lots of questions. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Kush. I think that was really interesting. It's also really interesting to hear from someone who has actual, experience with implementing AI for such a long time, even before the hype of large language models, I think. With that in mind, so I have a question for you to start things off, and then there's plenty of time for more questions. How do you view sort of the usage of AI since the introductions of large language models, which are the models that power stuff like ChatGPT? Um, yeah, can do you think that if you talk about AI now, many people talk just about large language models, but I've been hearing from professionals that, that's wrong because all of these AI models are still really relevant. Like, what's your take on that?
Maybe I could contextualize that, right? I think, okay, so let's look at the very bottom layer of AI. That could be probably the chips, the semiconductor chips. What sits on top of that? The cloud infrastructure. What sits on top of that is the foundational models that some of the big tech companies have been building. Those could be machine learning models, those could be natural language processing models, those could be LLM models. What sits on top of that? That is what I'm talking about. That is applied AI. To use these foundational models, you have to actually build applications that solve problems we need solving. Yeah. And so for me, how should you then use those AI? How should you build these AI applications. That's where you apply a responsible or an ethical AI approach. Now, the fact is, if you have a simple task, like you want to take some repetitive report that's being produced that takes 5 days to produce, you can build that application pretty quickly and reduce that from 5 days to maybe 2 hours or 3 hours. We've done that. But if you have complex tasks, like monetary policy, like combating the effects of air pollution, you are going to need to take an entirely different approach to building that applied application. The fact that you might choose Llama or Gemini or ChatGPT or whatever model that you're going to rent does not solve your problem that you're trying to solve. You've got to build that applied application. And in my view, the level of effort that you need to put into the responsible AI methods is directly proportional to the complexity of the task. And that's the point I was making. Simple report, you can build it quickly. Fighting gender violence, it's complex task, you need to take the time. Does that answer your question, Yuri?
Yeah, and it really expands on it as well. So, are there any other questions from the audience?
Yes, please. Thank you.
So, recently, also right now, we do observe very active development on the AI front. So the industry is definitely developing very fast, and especially right now. What I don't see and what's missing in my understanding is the combination of this technology with labor and human resources. Here is where I do see the gap, because as we discussed, it's a technology, it's a super productive and super beautiful technology, but it must be combined with the staff, and here I do see the lack of expertise, lack of history, lack of management approach. So can you give us your insight? How can we wisely and prudently combine this technology with human resources, like to achieve the best result? Because that's a separate science in my understanding. But the use of this technology, so again, independently, it's evolving there, but the combination is a different art.
Thank you very much for your question. I want to be sure that I understand your question correctly. When you say human resources, what are you talking about?
So let's consider, to keep things simple, let's consider AI as a computer. So we need people to work with computer and produce results. And first, we need to teach people how to use the computers. Second, there are different type of skills, human skills, and which can be combined with computers and produce different results depending on the processes. So my question is about optimal allocation and combination of resources. One resource is the AI, the other resource is pure raw labor, if I may. And especially in the central banking, it's very important how to combine these. And I do see a deficiency of expertise, one, deficiency of progress on this front. What I see is the progress only on the technology, on the computer side. So how do you have any ideas on this front, how to solve these issues or vision?
I'd be glad to have a conversation with you, because I want to be sure that I address your question fully, because there is so much to be said in this, really. You see, if somebody doesn't know how to use a computer, you don't need to worry about them for a little bit, I would say. If somebody knows how to use a computer, but they're doing the same repetitive task over and over and over again, and you can build a piece of AI to make that 3x, 5x, 10x times faster, you should do that immediately for a simple task. If there is something more complex, you need to invest in that. So I give, AI literacy is the very beginning, and all of the countries today are struggling with it. Last year, we trained more than 250 organizations with AI literacy. But if I just gave them AI literacy, that would be meaningless. What I need to give them is some foundational AI literacy and then contextual AI literacy within the function that they are performing, right? If I'm doing more than that, then that's just investment for the people I want to scale, right? But that's just the beginning, really, i.e. AI literacy. The EU AI Act requires AI literacy as a requirement for all the people who are deploying AI. They need to do that, right? I think that, for countries, they need to look at industries that are of strategic importance for them, and then to quickly go after simple and complex at the same time, building applied AI to drive those productivity gains. I can talk to you about all the different places where that should be done. So for example, if data is complex and has high volume, okay, there's an opportunity for AI. You see, if there is some reporting that is time consuming, there's an opportunity for AI. If if you need some sort of critical just-in-time insights, there's an opportunity, and so on, right? That's where the use cases are. So you have to look for that. Yeah. Now, if you look at industry, I've been studying the trends for it for the last, let's say, 3 years. Actually, the adoption of AI was quite slow in the beginning. Companies were sitting in that sort of intersection. They were feeling FOMO a little bit, fear of missing out, because they didn't want a competitor to quickly go and adopt AI and effectively outmaneuver them. And then they were also afraid that if they make their first moves and there is some bias or there's some other issue that it evolves, that they might have some reputational loss. So they were sitting at that intersection, waiting to act. In the last 3 years, so it first began in functions like sales and marketing, human resources, different kinds of applications begin to emerge. 3 years ago, if you look at the McKinsey report, the adoption rate was actually quite slow, right? And in the last 3 years, I have seen that accelerate every year. And governments are very much feeling the pressure of that, right? In the UK, for example, we have a national AI strategy. But guess what? That wasn't enough, because there's always a gap between policymaking and implementation. Last Monday, the Prime Minister came out and he announced a roadmap with deadlines. That's what's important, right? So now industry is accelerating its adoption of AI, doing exactly what I was talking to you about. Go after the simple use cases and the complex use cases. And government is pushing as hard as they possibly can to accelerate that because of the gains that they can have. I don't know if I answered your question fully, but I'd love to talk to you some more, because I love talking about this, and I can go on a bit, but
I see another raised hand. Go for it.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for important insights. My question is about the differences between private sector and public sector in the job of implementing technological innovations that's happening, AI specifically. This is growing rapidly, and we all know there are different kinds of people gathered in central banks or governments or agencies and in private sector in terms of speed of adoption of everything. Do you see any risks in this regard What I mean, when the AI is boosting innovation and productivity, is increasing the variety types of doing business and making markets more volatile, making products growing fastly. And in this world, when the central bank, for example, as you brought the example, and not only other regulators are lagging because they are these kind of institutions, they are, most of them are very conservative in that. Do you see this kind of, so for example, big tech is adopting AI and other technologies much faster, and the public institutions and regulators have no time. They simply cannot catch up. And like all time when the tulip bubble and dot-com bubble and everything happened, when the regulators were not there or were not reacting on this speed of information changes or speed of machines, and some very dramatic moments can happen. And specifically the regulating AI itself, I still don't understand how regulators may regulate AI. It's not an easy job itself. Thank you.
Yeah, that's a great question. Kush, do you want to answer it?
Yes, I mean, it's, again, that would require a response perhaps for 30 minutes, but I think that it's a very good question, right? Let me give you a few things that I would say. The fact is that when I was talking about the AI action plan or the roadmap that the government was, that just one that I talked about, the UK government, that's for the public sector, right? That's what they're talking about, that the public sector needs to do. This is the government's realization or saying that we can't wait any longer. The private sector will find their way because they will make their own investments. But the public sector, I believe, in my view, needs to, with urgency, get on the first rung of AI or get left behind. We simply cannot take the wait and see stance any longer, is the first thing I would say. The second is that, in my view, and I'm a strong, I carry the flag of responsible AI loud and proud, and that is my message, right? We can talk a lot about what that is and the principles of that and all of those and how you build it, but that's a different conversation. But to me, I think that government should enact AI regulation. What are they waiting for? Right? If I was talking to the ministers here after, what are you waiting for? If you look at surveys that have been done in the UK, more than 70% of businesses say that having a regulation would give them the confidence to move further and faster with AI investments that they need to make, right? There are actual, yes, okay, so potentially the regulation may not be, may not move, keep up with the pace of change. But the fact of the matter is, we provided we provided DG Justice when they were writing the first draft of the GDPR. They consulted with us, and we did a socioeconomic impact assessment of that law. And the fact of the matter is that law became a global standard because they decided to take that initiative. And guess what? All of our fundamental rights are better protected because of that. So I think that, yes, I think people need to move forward with an AI regulation. Just 2 weeks ago, the Tony Blair Institute is writing a framework for AI regulation for the Global South, and we provided input into that document. So the point is, creating a regulation is government's way of signaling to industry. Here's a set of consistent rules. Move forward. Holding back, this is not the moment to hold back. Right? It's all around us. GPT-4, I mean, by the time you get to GPT-5 and 6, if you look at the frontier of some of these foundational models and that they are moving and the pace at which they are moving forward, I do believe, and again, that's another conversation, but I do believe that these functionality will outstrip our ability to invest in AI literacy to bring up our populations, right? Because people don't understand how this stuff works, and there's just so much, sort of bad information out there. So again, I think AI regulation would support investment, foreign investment. I would think it would support investment by private industry because you create a set of rules so that everybody can move forward. And yes, it should focus on responsible AI. Yes, we shouldn't discriminate against the most vulnerable in our society, and so on, right? I don't know if there are any parts of your question that I missed, but I do think that and I don't know if there were other questions, but I can carry on a couple of other points that I'd like to make, but I don't want to capitalize on all the time and so on. Yeah.
Of Hannes, did this answer your question sufficiently?
But pretty much yes. I was referring also to these non-government institutions, be it big tech or ChatGPT itself or whatever it is. Probably we can simply be very, very weak in terms of resources in any government, even UK government, to catch up this. And instead, we could refer to technological giants. They can further have a bigger role in setting standards, for example, what is ethical, what is not, what is okay in terms of data protection when we are using AI, what is not, etc., because I don't see, at least around me, that the government institutions may be that much reactive in speed, I mean, compared to private institutions. And I'm not sure whether all of them from private sector ask for regulation, because part of them, they are just going forward. They are just standard setters. They are the front runners, and probably this is yet another phase of losing many authorities from public institutions, and the private giants are taking over.
Yeah. No, thank you again. I mean, the fact of the matter is that public sector organizations face some really serious challenges, right, in terms of deploying AI themselves. I've been in this for so long and working with a lot of different institutions in the UK and the EU, and I can tell you that, yeah, there are lots of things. I mean, there's siloed data, there's data stuck in legacy systems. There is, sort of, they are fearful of sharing data. They're fearful of algorithmic bias. They're fearful of data bias. There are issues around sort of, just simple making the investment, or, but the biggest one, frankly, perhaps, is resistance to change, right? And we have experienced that at every level. And so there are many challenges, no question about it. And those are the challenges of adopting AI. Then there are consequences of getting it wrong, and people are afraid of many of those consequences. But the reality is that the gains are so significant. We did an application where we did fraud detection, and we offered a 10x return. We were able to do in 10 hours what it takes them several weeks to do, right? So it is an opportunity to take people out of fraud detection and put them into enforcement, right? And governments have got to be able to see that transition that will absolutely need to take place within our workforces. I give you another example. We do a lot of work with social challenges and such things. People who don't want to share data, I would say, it is unethical not to share data within government agencies in a responsible way. The GDPR allows you to do that if that is the law in that country. It allows you to create data sharing agreements. We've done them ourselves for so many different governments. It is not an impediment. I would like to propose to you, and I believe that it is not the laws or any of these kinds of issues that are currently an impediment. It is simply the will, the resistance to change and the will to move forward, and my key issue is that the pace is moving faster than the adoption. So, and again, I'm not talking about foundational models, right? I mean, if I might say, we are humans, and sometimes we could be collaborating, but unfortunately, a little bit of an arms race as it comes to the creation of foundational models. But I'm simply talking about applied AI built on top of different types of foundational models. That's just a rental model that can help you do any task in any industry better, or tasks within government, within different government processes, including complex ones like monetary policy, better. Now, so for example, if you take a person who does a simple task and reduce it from 5 days to 2 hours, what is the level of training you need to do? If you take another one that's far more complex, that requires critical thinking, what is the level of training do you need to do? Right? So those are the kinds of considerations that need to be thought through to ensure that we move forward with it. I think standing by the, waiting by the sidelines it's a risk that I wouldn't propose that people should take.
Well, I'm happy you brought that up because I think at the Central Bank of Armenia, they're not taking that risk. They're already working on AI and have been working with AI, which sets up nicely our next two speakers before we transition to the final panel where we have plenty of time to talk about this way more. But Armen Narbekian, Deputy Governor of the Central Bank of Armenia, will talk to us a little bit before the panel about the risks and opportunities of AI. And then Ani Asojan, who we may have seen before, will tell about her experience.
Question to Kush before we move.
Sorry?
Can I have a question to Kush before we move?
Yes, sure.
Not related to monetary policy.
One final question. Yeah. And then over to Armen.
Just to share my thoughts. I'm not afraid that we will fall back in using applications or AI tools. I'm not even afraid that the AI will overtake the human. What I'm really afraid of is that in an era of geopolitical crisis that we're living in, the AI will be used by multiple stakeholders or multiple states in the world to create a bigger digital divide, first. Second, it will use to create competitive advantage in a warfare. And when the strong is always right now, it seems like we're moving to that type of the world where strong is right and there is no global standard setter in the world. I'm afraid that we won't be able to find an institution that Hovhannes was alluding to set the standards. So new UN for AI, I don't see it existing. So China will take its own path, US will take its own path. And I'm afraid that if there is a possibility with the use of AI to occupy Greenland, we might be seeing it in coming years. I'm not talking about Canada. But if I was able to tell you my grievances, so what do you think?
I mean, I think, first of all, thank you for your question, Governor. And, each one of us wakes up in the morning and we read the newspaper, and we can't help but be worried about the state of the world, right? We see the extraordinary investments going into AI and particularly these foundational models. We worry about all the models that we are not reading about, right? And, we also worry about how AI could be used for all kinds of purposes, right? And the thing is that, I don't have any of the answers because those are all potential realities that could happen. But here's what I think about, and that's what makes me happy, so happy to be here, is that what I think about is, well, what I think about is that I want to spread the word, I want to spread really with the loudest noise I can make the concepts of responsible AI across the world. The reason I'm happy here is because you did the same. You chose trust, accountability, and transparency as your guiding values, right? And I think the question you're asking me is a much bigger question, which is, given the geopolitical landscape we live in, how should we respond to that, right? And I think that the only way is to find ways to counterbalance with the values that we hold dear, you know? And that's, if I might say, you know, I also try to inspire entrepreneurs to do that. You wake up in the morning, you've got to find that mission and then arrive there. So perhaps it's not the right full answer, but yeah, just that's the response. That's what I'm sitting.
All right, thank you.